Hey everyone, and welcome to another Game Explained discussion. I'm your host, Derek Bittner, and I'm joined today by Ash Paulson to continue our reflection on everything non-Nintendo in 2016. We've already talked about the games, but what about the news? Let's get right to it. Alright Ash, so we just spent quite a bit of time talking about all the games we played or interested or everything else in 2016, but there's still a lot of big news stories that came out this year, and I thought, well, might as well cover them.
Yeah, I mean, there's always so much to talk about in any given year, and the games are really only tell half the story.
Yeah. So the first big one I'd say is the rise, potentially, of VR. So this year, we finally have all three VR options out. The Oculus Rift, the Vive, and the PlayStation VR. And from what I've seen, I don't know if they've made that big of a splash. I don't see them in the news all that often. I just always see them as sort of this, hey, this is a cool little thing you can do with your games, but not a big selling point. At least not yet. What about you?
I don't think that VR has really had the impact that I think a lot of pro VR pundits have said it will. I don't really see VR changing the gaming landscape, as it were. I think it could still be an interesting third pillar, or not third, like extra pillar, but I don't think it's ever going to completely or even somewhat replace traditional gaming. And I think the sales figures bear that out. I don't have exact sales data in front of me, but I do have this article from VG247, whose headline states VR was the biggest loser in sales this year, with PSVR sales forecast being greatly lowered. So basically, this data firm called SuperData has lowered their outlook for PSVR from 2.6 million sales to less than 750,000.
Ouch!
And that's just for 2016. Yeah, just for this year.
That is ridiculous. I'm not surprised though, because it's just so expensive and just seems like such a niche thing. It's not something to easily get up. There's so much. It's expensive. There's a lot of equipment required, and you need a lot of room.
That's the thing. It's like, and I mean, I want one. I played Res Infinite at E3, and I was blown away by the potential for VR, especially PlayStation VR. But then it comes out, and it's like, okay, well, if you don't have the PlayStation Eye or whatever, the camera, it's okay, $500 for that and a Move controller and a camera. But then it's like, okay, even if you're willing to buy in at that level, you're adding like 12 cables to your setup. And I don't know about you, but at least with my setup, I don't want like 12 cables running across my living room floor.
I already do.
Yeah, and you already do. So it's like, I just can't, like, I want to play it and I want to get in on the ground level of VR. Like, I want to be excited, but there are just, at present, too many barriers, I think, that are just kind of between me and that ideal experience. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and it's a worrying start when you have a new product like this, because if it's not selling well, it's not going to get supported. If it's not supported, it's not going to sell much better. So it's a question of, I wonder how long these different VR companies are going to try to hang in there to try to keep the VR going. And for me, like, it's still just too much of a novel experience. It's not something I need to have, I need to play. Just a quick story from my Christmas, sort of like a I guess anecdote. I got one of the games I got from my parents, from my mother, was Eve Valkyrie, which prominently said only for PlayStation VR. And one, I had no interest in this game whatsoever, but I saw like the PlayStation VR. I'm like, did she get me PlayStation VR for some reason? And no, she didn't. It just, whoever she got the game from mixed it up and with Valkyria Chronicles. But it was also like, I didn't talk about this. This is really expensive. Why would you get me this? Not that I would refuse it or anything, but it was just like, it was one of those things where it was like, I couldn't even say I was like super excited. It was just more confusion at the prospect of actually getting VR. It's like, what am I going to do with this?
Yeah, no, what a weird way to think you're getting PSVR but you're not getting it, but you're still happy anyway that you're getting what you want. But yeah, what a strange roundabout way to get that game.
Yeah, exactly. It's I much rather. I mean, it's telling when I would much rather have Valkyria Chronicles.
Right. So about VR, I guess, I think there's room for it to grow, but this is Sony we're talking about, and Sony are the masters of dropping what they perceive to be failed hardware like hotcakes. I mean, look what happened with the PSP, PSP Go, and the Vita even now. Mm-hmm. So, if PSVR sales continue, or I guess I'd say don't continue to go very well, then I can kind of see Sony dropping PSVR rather unceremoniously, just given their patterns in the past.
The only thing that might keep them going is the fact that there is Vive and Oculus Rift is out there as well. And I'm not sure how well they're doing, but right now it just seems like a sort of thing like it's made more for YouTube. It's like, hey, check out me being silly while I play this game. It sort of figures right into those type of videos. So who knows?
I'm glad you brought up Oculus though, because and I actually just played with a Vive last week at a friend's apartment, and again, VR I think is super cool. It's just a matter of having that. He had a PC, like a major PC gaming rig, hooked up to his TV. So it's like, okay, how realistic is this for those of us who don't want to hook a PC up to our TV,
Yeah. I've seen a lot more people talk about the Vive than the Oculus Rift. And
Me too.
It's still not looking good for VR on the whole. It's just...
No.
Like I say, it just seems to be one of those niche things that people are going to have fun with. Maybe there might be something, but I'm not seeing anything compelling. Like even IGN did that video with the new... VR experience with Resident Evil 7's demo, where you're sitting in that chair, and I watched it. And it's basically, here's a way for you to make a video of you getting scared at Resident Evil 7, and you didn't do anything in that. You literally sat there and just had the game scare you, almost like it was a Disney ride.
And Final Fantasy 15 was supposed to have that VR experience as well, and that never materialized. Like, that was the E3, and it never came out. And I can't help but wonder if it's because they just thought it wasn't worth it.
Maybe. I mean, who knows? And also hear about a lot of these experiences are rather short. Like the Batman VR thing came out, and I think that's only maybe an hour and a half. So I don't know.
But then you have these experiences like Rez, which are really built from the ground up for VR, and they're awesome. So there is that pulling factor that it's trying to pull me into PlayStation VR, and it's I haven't completely ignored it. Like, I still want to get into it, but I just don't know if it has room to grow, especially because sales aren't great, and I don't know where it goes from here. I don't think. Well, there's also the fact that you need a PS4 Pro for the visuals in your PSVR headset to look better. So I just feel like there are way too many little factors that have to kind of compete, and that have to all fall into the right place to make you have the ideal PSVR experience.
Yeah, and it certainly hasn't interested me yet. I mean, there might be some good experiences out there, but not enough for me to want to spend the money and work with the hassle and all that. So,
right,
VR in 2017 is definitely going to be like, this was its beginning. Let's see if it is able to pull itself up and get some compelling experiences.
Right, but for the record, I absolutely do not believe that PSVR is going to, change the gaming landscape or revolutionize the way we play. No, I think it'll continue to be at best a cool thing for people who want to buy into it, but and really cool once you get there, not vaporware, but just not necessarily going to just make it's not going to be something that everyone has to go out and get either.
Definitely not. So the next little bit of news is also I guess troubling as far as the sales department. Street Fighter V's troubled launch, and at first I was like, I didn't really get into it because I don't think I realized just how bad it was, because I got Street Fighter 5 at launch, and I was like, it's okay, there's probably still enough for me to enjoy it, and the characters look fun, the game looks good, I'll probably enjoy it. And my God, there was so little there, and I didn't realize how much I needed an arcade mode for fighting games for myself to really pick up characters. Because all I had were these super simple prologues for each of the characters until the story mode did come out. But again, there's no challenge. There's no way to adjust the challenge unless you do endless mode, which is not compelling for whatever reason, or training, which I don't do. I've never done training in a fighting game. And so Street Fighter V just fell completely flat for me in that aspect. And I mean, even it did add characters I like Jury and... I forget the other one, but yeah, just characters I enjoyed playing, and apparently that's what happened for a lot of people as well.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, there's no doubt that Street Fighter V shipped with less content than it should have, and I think Capcom really got burned by focusing on the competitive player base rather than the casuals, because I mean, really, as loud as the competitive fan base of any fighting game likes to be, they really are, they tend to make up the gross minority of the actual player base of a game. Like we see that borne out with Smash as well. And, I admire Capcom for really going all in on the, pro angle and really catering to pro players, but at the same time, they really did leave casual players out in the dust. And I know for sure that if I had bought Street Fighter V at $60 when it came out, that I would have felt really disappointed.
Oh, yeah.
Now, as it stands, I've actually had a kind of a positive experience with the game because I only got it over like Black Friday weekend, and it was $10. It was like it was before Black Friday, but I got it for like $10 off of Newegg. And, a lot of the DLC characters had already come out. The story mode was already out. The fight money was already implemented. Like, I think I kind of got into the game at the ideal time because there's already more content for me to enjoy. And I have to say, I really do enjoy firing up Street Fighter V for a few casual matches or, to make a little more progress in story mode, get a little more fight money. I mean, it's definitely still not the ideal experience. Like, I feel like there needs to be more and better ways to earn fight money. But for someone like me who waited and got into it a little later, I have to say I've actually been having a good time just playing it with friends, and I love the cast of characters. I love the visual style. Like, I do like that it still has that vibe and that core essence of Street Fighter. The game, I think, is great. It's just a matter of how much content it's shipped with.
Mm-hmm. And I think that's unfortunately going to color the game for a while.
Yeah,
it's going to be up to Capcom to really turn it around because, as they said, they're not going to have any like new releases. They're not going to get a Super Street Fighter V or anything like that. This is the core experience, and they're just going to add to it throughout its lifetime, which again is a reason I got excited for it. But then that initial content was just so non-compelling, and I just sort of stepped away, and I have no real reason to go back to it.
Well, for better and worse, Capcom really they're sticking by their word, though. They're going all in on this you only ever need the one disc angle, and they're not releasing a Super Street Fighter V. You can go on the PlayStation Store right now and find this, Street Fighter V Season 2 character pack on sale for like $80. It's like Street Fighter V plus all the characters so far, plus the Season 2 character pass. And it's like, okay, they're really going all in on this. Street Fighter V is the only version of the game that you will ever need to own, and we're just going to keep adding to it. So I don't know if they can turn it around at this point. I mean, what I'm reading now says less than 100,000 copies of the game were shifted between May and September of this year, which seems catastrophically bad to me. But of course, that's without context. So, maybe the context is it still did okay for them. But either way, they really are going all in on this, DLC only angle, and we're going to see how it works out for them.
Yeah, that's for sure. Well, anyway, next little bit of news story that comes out, because I really have nothing more to say about Street Fighter V,
right,
is that GameTrailers closed its doors this year, which I can kind of see why. Because YouTube just became so major, and when GameTrailers first came out, it really was the only consistently video-based video game website. And they did a lot of good work. I remember watching GameTrailers for a very long time. Eventually stepped away from it, just didn't match up with my attention anymore or anything like that. But I never thought it was a bad website ever. And it was sad to see it close its doors, although they were able to bounce back, I think, with a Patreon. And a lot of the guys that work there now are doing their own thing again.
Right, which is nice to see. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have too much more to say about this because, I mean, I agree. I watched GameTrailers quite a bit back in the day, and then I think I just kind of pulled away. But I never disliked their content. I just didn't stay super into it. But, I mean, they were definitely a huge part of the, the whole game journalism industry, and they left a mark. And just hearing that they were going to shut down was pretty oh, wow. Mm-hmm. Like, they're just one of those names that you always expected to hear around. Like, you just never expected to really go away.
Yeah. I mean, them hosting the content, they hosted the content for the Angry Video Game Nerd, which is how I discovered him. I don't watch him as much anymore either, but that is how I discovered him. And I think the reason I never really watched their preview coverage. I like their reviews, but then their reviews started to really spoil a lot.
Oh yeah,
It happened a shocking amount of times, just how much they would put footage in there that spoiled what felt like major moments of games.
I heard about that, yeah.
And I was like, nope, stepping away.
Yeah.
Glad they were able to bounce back from that, though. That is very nice to hear. Now, this one, I don't have too much to say about, but you were actually kind of invested in it, which is Sony has shut down Evolution Studios, who developed the MotorStorm series as well as Drive Club.
Right, and I mean, I'm not really invested because I'm a super big Drive Club fan or anything, but it's more just how surprisingly reactionary it was of Sony. Obviously, Drive Club failed to perform at launch and had a really rocky launch and had a really rocky, few months after launch too, and there's no going back from that. But I think a lot of people were surprised by just how quickly Sony canned Evolution Studios, despite the fact that Drive Club, even though it had problems, was a really impressive package for what it was, and it still is. So I just thought it was, and MotorStorm has continued, I feel, to be one of Sony's more or less well-performing series, and I feel like it's fairly consistent. So I think a lot of people were just kind of taken off guard by how unceremoniously Sony acts Evolution. That's really the only reason I wanted to mention it.
Yeah, well, with MotorStorm, I played I think the second game of the series a little bit, and I remember enjoying that. It was interesting and fun. Drive Club, I don't know what was going on with that. I mean, I wasn't super interested in the first place, but it also, I have no idea when that game was released, what it was about, anything like that. There was no marketing behind that game whatsoever. I felt like it just sort of came and went and was gone.
It did kind of, yeah. It's harder to remember now what went out. This is toward the beginning of the year, but I know that there were some major problems with. I feel like it was connectivity issues, like multiplayer issues, and there was weird messaging between the different versions of the game. It was just a completely botched launch in terms of server problems and things like that. And I don't think the game ever fully recovered, but once it did finally kind of get back on its feet, people saw that there was a really great game there. And I think that's why people were like, whoa, they just axed Evolution that quickly. There was actually a really good game in Drive Club. But I agree with you, it didn't quite... I didn't pay all that much attention just because Drive Club, for me, it's a driving sim. I'm more into that arcade racing style experience like Forza, for example. Whereas, Gran Turismo type sims don't really do it for me.
No, I get that. So,
yeah.
It is interesting they didn't have them do some other game, but I guess Drive Club was just that much of a sales failure. Moving on, the next little bit of news is Sega has acquired Atlus. That was pretty major, them distributing costs and working with distribution, and Sega is not influencing Atlus at all. It seems it's just sort of a distribution deal, and for the most part, I think it's kind of worked out.
Yeah, I mean, of course, as the internet is wont to do, this was, back when this was, I think this was announced in May or something around there, but yeah, back when this was first announced, of course, it was just complete chaos. It was the end of the world. Sega's going to completely ruin Atlus and take complete control of Persona and ruin everything. And of course, exactly none of that has happened. Sega stayed the course, Atlus has stayed the course, they're releasing Persona 5, they're doing fine. It's really seemed to have worked out well for Atlus. I don't think there's really any problems with this merger and with this acquisition, and it seems to me that Sega and Atlus, excuse me, it seems to me that Sega and Atlus are still both very free to pursue their individual paths of game development.
And I've also seen a lot more localization on Sega's part, the fact that Yakuza 0 is coming out over, the new Hatsune Miku is coming out next year, and all that stuff. So I think it's been a beneficial merger. Yeah,
Sega in general, has been really good about giving the fans the localizations they want, all the Miku games, Yakuza, Valkyria Chronicles Remastered. I don't know exactly where Sega's getting the money, because what I keep hearing is that Sega's having a hard time because of the poor sales performance of the games they've released recently, games like Sonic Boom, Fire and Ice. But I guess either they're doing well enough, or the merger with Atlus help them do well enough that they can afford to fund all these localizations, because these are not games, let's be honest, these are not games that are going to necessarily be million sellers. I don't think Yakuza is going to go out and light the sales charts on fire because it's a very Japanese game. Same with Miku. So I do find myself wondering how they continue to afford giving the fans all these awesome localizations, although I'm super happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, you brought up Valkyria. I was shocked that we're actually getting Valkyria Revolution next year, and I'm going to be there to support it. And I like this. It is sort of that Atlus mindset where they just fans want this game. It has a bit of a cult classic, cult edge to it. Why not put it out there and see what kind of sales we can make? And I like that kind of influence that Atlus has seemed to have had on Sega. So I'm all for it, and it seems to have worked out. Plus, let's be real here, Persona 5 is going to do amazing.
That is for sure. Persona 5 is going to do gangbusters, and I guess Miku must continue to do well enough, because Future Tone, coming out next month, is no less than the 5th Miku game to be localized outside of Japan, which I never thought one would be localized, let alone 5. So I guess Miku's doing well enough. Obviously, Persona's going to kill it. So whatever Sega and Atlus, whatever Kool-Aid they're drinking, whatever they're doing to make this work, keep doing it, guys, because we love what you're doing.
Yeah, and of course, Sega should have a pretty decent year next year, not only with Persona, but people are really excited for Sonic Mania, and if they can nail Sonic, the Project 2017 for Sonic, they might be in better shape too, so I'm optimistic.
Yeah, and me too. I mean, God, when you can compete with Breath of the Wild for my most anticipated game of 2017, you're doing something right. And I'm of course talking about Sonic Mania. So Sega really, to me, is on an upswing lately, and I'm really happy to see it. I hope it continues. I know that Sega issued a statement earlier this year, basically admitting that the quality of their games had not been up to par over the last few years, I think, and that they were really refocusing their efforts on trying to win fans back with the quality of their releases going forward, which I can tell.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of fans super happy with them localizing these games, so they can maybe pull from some of their classics that people want to see come back. Maybe something will happen. I'm very curious to see how Sega's gonna continue moving on here. Yeah,
same here, but I'm happy they're doing what they're doing. Keep doing it.
Oh yeah, definitely. Another bit of announcement we got was Microsoft discontinued the Xbox 360. It's no longer in production, which, not too surprising. Is the PlayStation 3 still in production? I believe it is, correct?
I think it is. Yeah, I believe so.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy to think that the 360 has been discontinued, though, considering just how successful that system was and how long it carried them forward. But I guess they're just ready to move on to the Xbox One.
Yeah, I mean, I think for a lot of people, including myself, the Xbox 360 was their first HD gaming console, and I guess it would be the original. The Xbox 360. And yeah, I mean, that was my first foray into that kind of gaming, and because the PS3, as we all know, took quite a while to take off, and it wasn't really, I think we associate the PS3 with being incredibly successful now, but it wasn't always that way. Whereas with the Xbox 360, it was successful right out of the gate, and I think it lost its way a little later on with the announcement of the Kinect and things like that, but for the first part of that generation, Microsoft had it on lockdown, and the Xbox 360 was a great introduction for me, at least, into HD gaming and the idea of having an always online console with Xbox Live. Xbox 360 represented a lot of firsts for me because I actually skipped the original Xbox, so I look back on it fondly, and I think it was obviously time for them to move on to the Xbox One and the Scorpio. But yeah, I look back on the 360 fondly, and it's weird to think that we're now at the point where it's been discontinued.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, there's also the infamous aspects of the 360, like the Red Ring of Death.
Yes.
And all that. But I don't think its influence should be undersold, because I think it was... I don't know how correct I am with this assumption or not, but it seems to me like 360 was almost like the refinement of the ideas that the Dreamcast put forward.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, to a degree, the Dreamcast and the original Xbox. I think the 360 was just a more, like you said, refined take on what an HD online, typically always online console could be.
And it was a big influencer. Like, Sony had to directly compete with that, and they obviously did that with the PlayStation 4 and everything else moving forward, and while still continuing. Now, obviously, that success did the same thing to Microsoft that happened to Sony with the PlayStation 3, so we'll see how the Xbox One eventually evolves. But it does seem like they're taking lessons. But again, I never owned a 360, but I did play quite a few 360 games, so I'm very curious. I cannot undersell how successful and influential the 360 was.
Yeah, no, same here. I mean, there was a period of time there, early, I'd say 2011, 2012, where the vast majority of my gaming was done on 360 with, the Wii once it came out. But, for a while there, PlayStation 3 wasn't even on the radar, and it's easy to forget that.
Oh yeah, I didn't get a 360, but I also didn't buy a PS3 until Metal Gear Solid 4 came out.
Right.
I got that bundle, and that's when they slowly started to come around on things. I mean, it's you can always tell how well a system's doing based on how casual people refer to a console. Back in the day, when I was a kid, it was always, you're off playing Nintendo, not video games, just Nintendo. Yeah. And then when Sony was big, you're playing PlayStation right now. Okay. And of course, during 360, it was you're playing Xbox.
Yeah, that's actually a very good point. Like what is the typical like vernacular for the layperson, and that really kind of tells you what's popular at the moment.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what it's currently at right now. It might just be so. We might have just gotten to a point where the layperson just knows it now, but who knows?
Right.
Well, next up we have Vivendi has successfully executed a hostile takeover of Gameloft from the Guillemot brothers, and it looks like Ubisoft is being eyed next. Now, I don't have a whole lot into this, but the Vivendi doing these takeovers is kind of interesting, especially Ubisoft, because them being so huge. Ubisoft is a big company.
Right. And yeah, I don't want to pretend to know the ins and outs of this story,
No.
but from the research I've done on it, it sounds like this isn't just some pie in the sky like, oh, they'll never be able to do this. It sounds as if, business-wise, Vivendi actually does stand an actual shot at being able to execute a hostile takeover of Ubisoft at some point soon, maybe within the next 5 years. So I only wanted to bring this up because it does seem to be a very real risk, and it would be really bizarre to see a developer as storied and as important as Ubisoft be forcibly taken over and bought out.
Yeah, and I don't know much about Vivendi. I don't know how much they would change,
Right.
if anything would change or anything like that. But it's still like, doesn't Vivendi still own Activision?
I believe so. I don't know offhand, but I want to say yes, they do.
Yeah, I'm not sure, and I know it's Activision Blizzard. So if Vivendi did get a hold of Ubisoft, under one roof you'd have Ubisoft, Blizzard, and Activision, along with Gameloft, which is huge in the mobile spaces.
Right, which is just bizarre to think about. So, yeah, I don't know. I don't know if Vivendi actually will, do this, but everything I've been reading says it's quite possible, and the pieces are being moved into place. So, 5 years on, we may end up seeing a very different Ubisoft than the one we have now.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, I don't have much more to say on
No,
this, but
yeah.
it's more of one of those curiosities than anything else.
Exactly, yeah.
What is interesting, though, is that this year was the year Sonic celebrated his 25th anniversary, and there was a bunch of anniversaries this year, but we'll focus on Sonic for now because that's a little bit more in our wheelhouse. But
Right.
But what's so fascinating about it to me is that there really wasn't much done for it.
Yeah.
The only game we got for Sonic this year was Sonic Boom Fire and Ice, and Sega decided to push, like, I don't know if they decided to push back or consciously did this or anything like that, but it's kind of interesting that the two games that would have been much better for a 25th anniversary release are not coming until next year. And I think
Right.
that also shows just how much more of a focus Sega has on quality right now, and the fact that they're willing to let Sonic take the time he needs in order to have a good game, hopefully.
Yeah, I mean, this is huge for Sega. If Sega really has learned, and this is them demonstrating that, I mean, we know now that pretty much the whole reason Sonic 2006 was as unbelievably terrible as it was because it was rushed out to meet, the holiday sales expectations.
And the 15th anniversary, yes.
Exactly. So, I'm fine with them not having much to release during the actual 25th anniversary if it means that these games, Sonic Mania and 2017, are going to be awesome when they come out. Release it when it's ready. You don't need to release something during the anniversary year. Everyone knows it's Sonic's 25th anniversary. They had that awesome 25th anniversary party, which, yes, I understand was not so awesome if you weren't there, but I was there, and it was awesome. But, I feel like enough people know it's Sonic's 25th anniversary that you don't need to release a crappy game just to capitalize on that, And for all intents and purposes, Sonic Boom, Fire, and Ice seem to be pretty good, or okay at least, not bad at all.
Yeah, that's, fine for what
Yeah.
it is. That's what it was.
And, plus, even without the games, we still have the Sonic Boom cartoon, which is brilliant. It's so good. I can't believe how good it continues to be. And we have these really exciting new Sonic games coming out next year. So, happy 25th anniversary to Sonic. And I think the most impressive thing about this anniversary is really just how relevant Sonic has managed to stay. Like, I'll be the first person to admit, as a Mega Man fan, like, I love Mega Man, but he's not relevant today like Sonic is, and I totally admit that. Sonic is pretty much, if not every bit as relevant today as a kid's character as he was 10 years ago, 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Like, he really has stayed in the kind of the cultural consciousness, I think.
Mm-hmm. Which is impressive to do. It really
Yeah.
is. And, again, good on them because, obviously Sonic 06 didn't end up too well because they wanted to make the 15th anniversary. Yet in the 20th anniversary, we got Sonic Generations. And I love that game. It's my favorite
Me
3D
too.
Sonic. But you can definitely see where corners were cut to sort of fit this game in.
Sure.
be within that 20th anniversary. And I'm glad they're not doing that to the others, because I don't know, it felt like the story, or they could have done a lot more with the Generations concept than they did.
Right. No, I totally agree. And I wouldn't even be upset if they made Generations 2. Like, I'm perfectly happy to have Mania and a completely new game, but man, if that new game ends up being or feeling like a Generations 2, I'm okay with that.
Oh yeah, totally. Well, this next one, this is all you.
Yeah, I'll this will take me like a minute, but basically, I didn't know this. I was going through news stories looking for stuff to talk about, and Relentless Software, who is the developer of the Buzz series, has shut down. And this isn't really a big deal for most people. I just wanted to mention it because my wife and I play the Buzz games all the time, and they're like this series of trivia games for PlayStation 3. And I was always hoping and thinking that the series would eventually come to PS4. Well, apparently not, because the developer shut down. So, yeah, pouring out for Relentless Software. You guys gave me and my wife lots of trivia-related fun over the years, so I'm going to miss you guys.
I was aware of the series, but I never picked it up myself, and I believe they even got a stage in PlayStation All-Stars, so it was big for a while.
Yeah, they did. Yeah, Buzz was like one half of one of the stages, yeah.
Yeah, so it's sad, but it's like... You wish they didn't have to shut down, but at least find something else to do. But that's the way it goes sometimes.
Well, it might just be that trivia games themselves are becoming less relevant with like the proliferation of all the Jackbox games. I feel like the Jackbox Party Pack games have kind of created a monopoly on all those kinds of like party trivia like games.
Yeah, just a bit. Well, speaking of shutting down, Renegade Kid also shut down and split it into two different companies. Atui, which apparently will work on 2D games, and Infinitissimo, which will work on 3D games. So I think you know the ins and outs of this way more than I do, Ash.
Basically, Renegade Kid was run by two co-founders, and those co-founders decided to split up. Amicably, as far as I understand. There's no bad blood. But basically, Jules Watcham, one of the co-founders who we like a lot and talk to, he created Atui and took all of Renegade Kid's 2D 2D assets like Mutant Muds, things like that. And then the other co-founder created Infinitissimo, which took all of Renegade Kid's 3D assets. So Renegade Kid continues to live, just in two different forms now, and depending on what about Renegade Kid you liked, you can either, continue to follow Atui, Infinitissimo, or both. As for me, of course, I will be following Atui, because I love Jules Watcham, I love his work, I love his games, Mutant Muds is awesome, so I've talked about that plenty, before, about how much I love his stuff, so I'm excited to see what he does at Atui.
Yeah, I mean, hey, forget me means good games. That's all I really care about. At least they're not gone. They're still around, and that's what I'm happy about.
And actually, Andre and I got a chance to play Jules' new game, or I should say Atui's new game, Chicken Wiggle, at PAX. Or sorry, not Andre and I. Tom and I got to play it, and we loved it. Like, it is exactly the kind of simple pick up and play, but really addictive platforming game that Mutant Muds is, but it's kind of like a different take on it. So yeah, keep an eye out for Chicken Wiggle on the eShop next year. It's a lot of fun. And I love that name, Chicken Wiggle. I like saying it.
I was going to say, the name is pretty great.
Right? Yeah.
To round out all of our shutting downs, United Front Games, the developer of Sleeping Dogs, shut down. And they did a bunch of games before, including like a lot of remaster ports. But Sleeping Dogs was definitely their big ones. And I haven't played a lot of that game, but I did play like a good 3 or 4 hours and really enjoyed it. Like, it really did feel like just an action open world, like a Chinese kung fu movie, and with some brutal takedowns.
Same here. I only played a little bit of Sleeping Dogs, but what I did play of it, I really liked, and I really thought it. I mean, at least I guess from my own perspective, it really kind of nailed that kind of, I guess, Asian crime drama feel that it was going for, and I feel like it really nailed that, and it felt authentic. Of course, I say that as an outsider, not really knowing if it's authentic, but it seemed authentic. And either way, the gameplay was a lot of fun. Like, it's really a shame that United Fronts is gone, because I'm actually kind of surprised, because I feel like this game did well, it sold well, it was generally a success for Square Enix, yet it just wasn't enough.
Yeah, that's a shame when that happens. Like, the sales projections are just too high to meet, and Square Enix is definitely guilty of that quite a few times.
Yeah, no, Square Enix and their sales expectations that's a whole conversation we could have.
Yeah, they get a little ridiculous, but
yeah,
best luck to those guys. Hopefully they land on their feet, and hopefully we get something else good. So we'll see. Well, this is probably one of the biggest ones, and that is the No Man's Sky's troubled launch and everything after, up until this release of that update, and then that update happened, and I just haven't heard anything about it since.
Yeah, I mean, I think No Man's Sky is quite handily going to... I've been following the biggest fail of the year thread on GAF, and I think No Man's Sky is going to win it by a mile. Mm-hmm. And I just feel like from the beginning, this was a case of a game being promised to be much more than what it ever was. I don't think that Game Awards reveal did any favors for Hello Games.
No, I think they weren't ready for it. I think they were going to shut it down too, and then all the hype happened for this after the Game Awards thing and just how much potential it had, and I think it was just way too much for them.
Yeah, I mean, I think they just weren't ready for the hype and the excitement that Game Awards trailer created for them, and I think I don't know. I don't think Hello Games set out to swindle anybody. I don't think there's some conspiracy at work here, but it does seem as if Sean Murray got caught up in his own game's hype and didn't really want to deflate any of that hype by setting realistic expectations. And if that is what happened, then he set himself up for this. I gotta say, I mean, when you go back and you look at the features that were promised in the trailers that were released of the game, even right before release, and then you go and see how many of those features didn't make it into the game, there's something a little bit strange about how this all went down.
It just seems like a case of getting in over your head and just not being able to get out and just sort of being carried along that flow.
That really is what seems to have happened, and I mean, it could be more dastardly than that, but that really, I think they were propelled to a level of fame very quickly that they were not expecting and were not ready for, and I think everything we saw happen was kind of a domino effect that resulted from that.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look at like their previous game that they were known for was Joe Danger. So going from something like Joe Danger to something like No Man's Sky is an insane leap in what you're doing.
And I mean, I think, as the internet tends to do sometimes, I think we've focused so much on what everything that No Man's Sky isn't, that we've also kind of overlooked everything it is. And it definitely is a lot of broken promises, but I think there's a very interesting, very ambitious game at the core of No Man's Sky that I don't think obviously bore out in the way that fans wanted it to, but I don't think that it should just be dismissed out of hand like it was a crappy game and it has no redeeming factors. The fact that it does have this entire procedurally generated universe with however many quintillion planets, just as a design concept, that's pretty cool, I think.
Potentially, yes, but I also heard the common complaints of like, yeah, there's a lot of planets, but they're not really that different on a core concept. And the base building update, they apparently fixed a lot of things, added a lot of those promises and whatnot, but I think it's like Street Fighter, it's almost a case of just too little too late, and it's not going to be able to recover from this, and that's unfortunate. I hope, the guys, the development studio is able to continue making games or do something with it, but it's definitely going to be rough for them.
Yeah, I'll be curious to see where Hello Games goes from here, because, I mean, they basically fell into complete radio silence for the months following No Man's Sky's launch, which I'm not sure was the best move for them. But now that they're finally talking a little bit again, I wonder if they're going to try to continue to save No Man's Sky or just, call it quits and move on to the next project or what. But, it really has been an interesting kind of saga for them.
Yeah, that's for sure. So, we'll see. Well, that's most of the major news, except for the fact that there were actually quite a few video game movies that came out this year. We got Ratchet & Clank, Angry Birds, Warcraft, Kingsglaive, Final Fantasy 15, and Assassin's Creed. And boy, does that run the gamut.
It really does. Well, does it really? Because I feel like it doesn't. I don't know if they run the gamut if they're all bad.
Well, true.
they all run the bad side of the gamut, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, as far as like where they come from, like Ratchet & Clank, I was legit excited for because I thought that would work. And then all the reviews started coming in, and I started looking into it. It was like, oh, it's just no, you did all the worst things to it. How could no?
I mean, maybe it was silly of me, but I actually really genuinely believe that Ratchet & Clank might be a pretty good kids movie.
I did too, and it was a shame to hear that it really wasn't, and especially when the game was so good.
The game was great. Obviously, we talked about that, and I don't know. I really didn't think, with all the money they were throwing behind that movie, or at least the money they seemed like they were throwing behind it, it just seemed like it was going to be, at the very worst, an inoffensive kids movie. But apparently, it was just bad.
Yeah, that's what I hear too, and it just seems like a bummer.
Yeah.
It's one of those, they fell into the trap of, at least we got the main actors returning for the big ones like the Ratchet, Clank, Nefarious, and Quark.
Right.
But everything else was, of course, the celebrity voice actors.
Exactly.
And they fell into that trap. It's a shame. Angry Birds, I didn't see, but I didn't hear many good things at all either.
No, actually, I want to say I did hear good things about Angry Birds, and I realized that I may have misspoken when I said all these movies are crappy, because I haven't seen them all, but Angry Birds I actually heard was pretty good.
I did not hear that at all. I heard it was stupid.
Okay, well, I mean, I don't have any desire.
Yeah, I don't either.
Watch it
I think it's on Netflix, so if you're curious,
okay,
be my guest.
Man, I would have to have nothing else to do that day, like literally nothing, and even then, I'd be like, well, I just want to do something else.
Yeah. Well, then of course Warcraft, which I've not really played the Warcraft series that much, but apparently it was very faithful to the original Warcraft game, and probably too faithful because it was just boring to a lot of people.
Yeah, I don't know what I was expecting of it.
I thought it was something that maybe had potential for it because, high fantasy, as big as Warcraft is, maybe it'll do something. And the thing is, it did very well in China, so it might get a sequel.
I mean, I feel like it maybe had that kind of Prince of Persia movie potential, and like I feel like maybe it somewhat lived up to that, but maybe not completely.
Actually, I'd probably put the Prince of Persia vibe onto Assassin's Creed. Again, not getting great reviews either, but something that's kind of serviceable, kind of matches what the game is all about, but still not a great movie.
Although I feel like Prince of Persia actually like got decently positive reviews as a passable action movie, whether you like the video game or not. Yeah. Assassin's Creed, I feel like the reviews are coming in well below that.
I'm not sure. I remember going to see a Prince of Persia and not being impressed.
Yeah, I didn't see it, yeah.
Yeah, it's a shame. But the only one of these that you did watch was Kingsglaive, and I'm not sure. Like, that's definitely just for fans.
Well, you know what? I'm going to give it one more shot. I have the deluxe edition of Final Fantasy 15. My wife and I, it comes with the Kingsglaive Blu-ray. So we are going to go in one more time with an open mind and watch it subbed, because one of the biggest problems we had with it when we went to go see it in theaters at the premiere in LA was that the voice acting, not only was the English voice acting really uneven, some of it was good, some of it was terrible, but the sound mixing, like, I don't know if it's the movie or the theater, but we had a genuinely hard time hearing a lot of dialogue. And so, if it is the theater's problem, not the movies, maybe the movie isn't quite as bad as I thought it was. I don't think it's a good movie. I'm not going in and expecting to be like wowed by Kingsglaive, but it may not be as bad as I thought it was. But I will be able to tell you after I go back and watch the Blu-ray.
Is it a necessary piece of the Final Fantasy 15 puzzle, do you think?
Man, I hate to say it, but it kind of is. I mean, you don't have to watch Kingsglaive to get, enjoyment out of 15 by any means, but I do think that it helps. I think it helps fill in certain parts of the story that are not filled in during the game. And I've said this before about 15. I said this, I think, in my discussion with Roger and Nintendo. But I think it would have really served 15's story to have Insomnia in the game at the beginning. Like, I feel like you should see Noctis existing within his home in the game so that you feel bad for him when he loses his home. As it stands, you only really ever see the fall of Insomnia in the movie. And then by the time the game starts, or when the game starts, Insomnia is falling off screen in the movie. So it's like, you have to kind of watch the movie to get the whole story, but it's really too bad. Like, and the movie isn't that great, at least from what I can tell. Like, I'll watch it again and see if it's better than what I thought, but I'm kind of not thinking it's going to be all that great. So I really think Square's efforts would have been better served in just putting that part of the story into the game itself.
It could easily work as just a series of cutscenes.
Yeah, it is what it is, and hey, at the very least, Kingsglaive looks amazing. I mean, Square always has amazing visuals, and that is one thing I could say without a doubt, is that it is a showcase. If you have like a swanky new TV that you got over the holidays that you want to show off, Kingsglaive is the way to do it, because man, that game is beautiful, or that movie's beautiful.
I still prefer to have a good story, but nah.
No, I totally hear you. Yeah, and hey, you could just play the game and show it off that way too.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah.
But alright, I think that finally covers it for our non-Nintendo 2016 year in review discussion. Thanks for watching, and if you like this video, be sure to like us on Facebook and Twitter at GameXplain. And of course, make sure to subscribe to GameXplain for more on third parties, PlayStation, and other things gaming too. Till next time, bye.